and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be scrapping this photo of my mum and my daughter using these papers from the Amy Tangerine collection. I'm going to fussy cut some of these flowers out to use. I'd started doing it there, but I cut the rest out off camera. I had thought about using this butterfly paper and fussy cutting those, but don't in the end. And then this blue paper to back the photo and some white card, which I've decided to do some a little bit of mixed media on using this Heidi Swap stencil and these three paints that I've got, picking up on the blue and the pink that are in my photo. So I start off with the Dilutions blue and stencil that on. Obviously this is sped up because I cannot stencil this fast. I sometimes use a sponge to do stenciling, but I found I had these stencil brushes, so use those instead. Here a bit further on down I've used some of the darker blue and mixed it in with the lighter blue just to give a little bit of variation on the colour there. My hands got all blue paint all over them, but carried on regardless. And adding a bit more of the darker blue over onto the side, I decided I wanted some of those hearts to come off the edge of the paper just to make the pattern look a bit better, although I messed up and smudged a little bit, which I was a bit cross about. Anyway, put it to one side and let that dry, and then decided to add some pink paint, which was absolutely solid. So I added some water just to get it to work for today. And I have to admit, after that I threw it in the bin because it was really quite lumpy and not very easy to work with. I think this stencil is a Paige Evans stencil. So I did this over top of the blue hearts and onto some of the white just to give a little bit of extra oomph to the background. And once I finished that, I put it to one side to dry. I work in my conservatory, so it was really hot and it dried really quickly, and came back and started to create the layout. So the first thing I did was mount the photograph on the blue paper and used my We Are Memory Keepers ruler again. This time I did 3/16 of an inch round. I decided I wanted a slightly larger border for this photo as I was only doing one layer. So cut round that, again lifting up the edge of the photo to make it easy to do. Didn't quite cut through there, so a little bit of extra, and then I messed it up. Had to trim it with my scissors, and then I hate it if it's not exactly straight, and it wasn't, so I had to come back in with my metal ruler and do a nice straight line. Then it was a case of deciding where I wanted the photo. As my mum's looking off to the left, I decided the photo needed to be on the right so that she was looking into the page, not off the page. And then it was a case of building up my clusters. I decided I wanted a cluster top left and then bottom right. Used some of the flowers that just were half a flower off the edge of the paper. I'd cut some leaves out, some of the smaller flowers, which I decided could cover up my little splodgy mistakes on the layout, which worked quite well. And then here I decided to cut the leaf off that flower and just use the leaf as a separate embellishment. It looked better in that cluster. And then I had some tiny little leaves which I added onto the smaller flowers over on the left hand side. Having done that, I decided that it didn't look quite right and the photo needed a bit more grounding. It needed some sort of shelf to sit on, and I considered that pink stripy paper. Before I did that, I decided that the hearts needed outlining in white pen. So some had a solid line, some had a dotted line, but I won't make you sit and watch all of those. Fast forward to that all being done. Liked that, I thought that looked a lot better, but still that it needed something more. But I decided to stick down those little flowers because they were definitely going to be there and I wasn't going to move those. So having stuck those down with my nice Nouveau glue, which dried so quickly, the conservatory was so hot when I did this layout, I decided, yes, I would use this pink paper. I just tried to decide whether I needed another layer. And then I decided, no, it was a shelf I needed. And I cut a little slope on it and I was really happy with how that looked. I just felt that was what the photo had needed. Did consider fishtailing it, but it would have made it too short, so I just distressed the edges of it and then stuck that down and into place. As you can see, that's the back of the photo of the flowers, paper the flowers that I cut out. Distress the edges of the photo mat just so that it all looked cohesive. stuck that down, and then it was, having done that, I realised that I'd moved it slightly and needed to just go over some of the hearts and do a bit more of the white outlining. Once that photo was down, it was then a case of rebuilding up my embellishment clusters and sticking everything down. So whilst I'm sticking these down, I'll explain what the photo is. It's my mum, bless her, and my daughter. And we went over to my mum's a couple of days after my daughter's 30th birthday, because my daughter loves to bake, and she decided that she'd do an afternoon tea for her grandma. So we went over to see my mum, and this photo, mum was showing Penny some photos on her phone of Penny's cousin, my niece, who's been doing some dog grooming as work experience, and also showing Penny some photographs of my sister's dogs. But they didn't realise that I was taking the photo, so it's lovely. I just absolutely love this photo because it's so natural. My mum doesn't like it because she said she looks old, but I think she looks absolutely fantastic. She'll be 80 next year, and no, she's absolutely brilliant. And she and I have quite good fun together. I see her about once every couple of weeks, because she lives in Hemel Hempstead, which is about 52 miles away, door to door, but because we have to go around the horrible M25, it can take, well, a good day it's about an hour and 10 minutes. Time before last I went to see her, 3 hours there, 3.5 hours coming back, not good. Anyway, back to the layout. I'm just doing the tiny little leaves, sticking them down and getting them all finished. And then I decided I wanted some different texture. So I found some wood veneer shapes that I'd got, the butterflies, flowers and leaves, and decided to go with some of the flowers. Also decided I needed the third cluster down at the bottom of this sloping piece of paper. So put a few of the flowers that I'd cut and some of the leaves down there. And once I'd popped those in, got them how I wanted them, it was then a case of choosing which of the wood embellishments I wanted to use. I thought about using some of the butterflies. They didn't seem right, so I picked out some of the flowers and some of the leaves. Tried the flowers, didn't like them, but then tried the leaves and did like them. So I popped one into each cluster, just tucking it in underneath the paper leaves that were there, dropping it, putting glue on my layout where I didn't need it, wiping it off, and then popping them down and just holding them down for a couple of, or very short while for the glue to set. So 2 in the top cluster, 1 in the bottom right cluster, and then 1 in the bottom left cluster. Having done that, I'd got this title that I found on my desk that said Right Now. I believe that's an Amy Tangerine one. And I thought that would do for my title. In fact, it looked perfect there. It was the right colours. So it was then just a case of doing a little bit of journaling. I always like to journal on, practically every layout I do journaling on. So just explaining why we were at Mum's and about the photograph. I just love it. That was just one of my favourite photographs of the two of them. Such a natural photo. So I'd put a few more lines in because I couldn't stop writing, which is me. I do like to write a lot. And then having done that, it was time to do the date stamp, and I didn't have space at the bottom to do that. So instead, with some blue ink, I did it on the side of the layout, but I think that looks okay just there. Right, so nearly finished. Finishing touches needed to come up. I had a look through my stickers just were lying on my desk to see if there was anything else that I fancied using, but there wasn't. So I decided to get my little dish and use some of my sprinkle gold hearts that I'd punched out. Actually, they're not punched. I've got a die for my Big Shot, and it cuts out lots of different sized hearts. I think it's a confetti die. It's great. I love it. So you wind that through 2 or 3 times, and then I got a whole dish full of hearts to use on my layouts. So I tucked all of those in where they needed to go, having a think about what to do next, and grabbed some Nouveau drops in pink. I don't know about you, I find some of the Nouveau drops flow really easily,
And then others are really gloopy and don't come out of the bottle very well. These ones were okay. I do wonder as well if they get too cold and then they don't flow very easily. As I say, it was quite a hot day when I was doing this, so it might be that because I'm in the conservatory, they were nice and it made it nice and runny. I don't know. Anyway, dotting those all around, and that is it, my finished layout. So I'll show you some still pictures at the end. Thank you for looking, and I'll be back again very soon.